We pay respect to their elders, laws, customs, and creation spirits. We recognise these lands have always been places of teaching, research, and learning. And QUT acknowledges the important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people play within the QUT community. Okay, so welcome along, everybody. Thank you for your student IDs in the chat. If you've just arrived, if you can pop those into the chat, we can record your attendance. Okay, so today's slides are already up on Blackboard. The video will be up potentially this afternoon or tomorrow morning. So you'll be able to have a recap if you need to. And today, my lovely co-host is Dr. Catherine Young. She'll be here for the first little while. Hey, just to pop some links in if we need them as we go through. But don't worry too much. I will send you an email at the end of the session with anything important to do with the links to the resources. Okay. So just to recap, a lot of you hopefully have come to our workshops and writing circles before, but just to recap, the workshops, we focus on the theory and the principles, and we do peer discussions in breakout rooms, and our writing circles are more interactive. So we have exemplars and we have practical activities, and you get a chance to usually check your own writing depending on what the theme is for the day. Writing circles, there's usually some kind of preparation to do, even if it's just preparing your writing. Okay, and we send that UniHub reminder that everyone gets the day before, and that has everything you need to know for the writing circles and the workshops. So just remember to have your writing ready, at least 3 consecutive paragraphs if you can from the beginning of a section. That's going to give you the best opportunity to practice the proofreading strategies. Paragraphs that you haven't received feedback on if you can as well, and the activity sheet. Hopefully you'll receive that in that UniHub email yesterday. If you haven't got the activity sheet, if you can pop into your emails and grab it. And if you didn't get the email, let us know in the chat, and Dr. Young will pop that into the chat for you guys to access, but we will be using that a little bit later. Now, with our exemplars, the exemplars are in the activity sheet. I just want you to keep in mind that I do try to provide a range of fields of study, but obviously your faculty and your supervisors will have much better access to exemplars that are relevant to you. But with our exemplars, if it's not in your field of study, you're reading it as a reader, okay? So the topic shouldn't matter too much, and I do try to choose topics that everyone can understand quite well. So you're taking the role of the reader. So please don't worry about if the topic isn't exactly the same as yours, because it's going to be pretty impossible for me to do that, to get exactly your topic. But what I will say is I'll give you a shout out, and anybody who's brave and wants to send me, email me a section of their writing that you would be willing to give me permission to use as an exemplar, and if I can use it, then you would have an exemplar relevant to your topic if that's what you wanted to do. So I'm going to pop. Obviously you need to give me permission to share it, and it has to be able to be used as an exemplar, but you know, I do get some feedback of people saying, oh, it didn't fit my exact topic. So my answer is it doesn't need to for what we're using the exemplars. The other thing to remember is that you're all at different stages of your research journey, different milestones. So I'm very aware of that as well. So today I've actually got an exemplar from a proposal and from a final thesis to try to cater for as many people as I can. And I just wanted to do a quick poll to find out what you guys are at with your research milestones. So it doesn't matter which research degree you're doing, but if you can let me know if you're doing your proposal, which would include your confirmation, are you up to your final seminar or your MPhil research seminar, maybe external examination, or maybe thesis corrections. Thank you. This gives me a good idea to know who we've got coming. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a range there. Is that everybody? I think so. All right, so mostly research proposal, which is great. Okay, so you're going to get those really good strategies and skills right from the beginning. All right, so I'm going to end that one. And you can see the results there. Most of you at confirmation or research proposal. Okay, let's move along. So today's session, we're going to start with a little bit of basics about why proofreading is important. We'll look at some strategies, and we've got the 2 exemplars. So I will go through fairly quickly, but that's why having it beforehand and having your own copy is useful. And then you're going to do some proofreading of your own. So have your document ready, and then we'll have time for a Q&A session at the end. So ask questions if you want to through the session, but I may not get to the questions, but I will come back to them in the Q&A, or write them down and save them. Okay, so our goals for today: the importance of proofreading skills. You're going to look at some strategies and practice proofreading your own writing. So just to get you to start thinking is, think of 2 aspects of your writing, if you can, based on feedback you've received recently, of any errors or improvements that you should be making with your writing when you proofread. So if you want to write them at the top of your draft document that you're going to use later, that would be good. That will jog your memory back then. You could write it in the chat if you're willing to share the things that you need to focus on. So it could be a specific grammar point. It could be your vocabulary needing to be more academic. Maybe it's where you structure your paragraphs. So if you can think of a couple of things and pop those down, that'll start you thinking about what proofreading might mean for you. All right, so why do we care about proofreading? Well, as a researcher, you're developing a lot of skills, and one of those is writing, and it does help with our writing if we feel confident, okay, about what we're doing, and that's going to help us become part of a research community, which is really what you're wanting to do as, you know, researchers who are learning. So the other thing is, with writing is, yep, they're basic skills, but not when we're writing about research. It's far from basic, as you're probably figuring out. So it's very challenging for our cognitive processes, and also, as I said, our confidence. If we're high achievers and all of a sudden we're told, your writing's not really as good as it could be, it can make us lose our confidence. So what we try to do with the writing program is we want you to become confident and feel good about your writing. And of course, we're writing for a specific research community, so we need to understand the discourses and the conventions that, that our research community uses. So this is why improving our academic literacy is so important, and getting good at proofreading is part of that. You know, we do question ourselves, will anyone care? Am I going to find anything? So if we can become more confident writers, this is going to help all the way through your research, all of the aspects of it. And as I said, that idea of a good and a positive student identity and feelings of belonging are really important. So if you can communicate and present your research in a clear way that fits in with your research community, it's going to help to increase those feelings of belonging. Okay, so of course, drafts are the all-important part of the writing process. We need to have those messy drafts to get what we're thinking down on the paper. This is where your proofreading then comes in, because we need to tidy up those drafts before we send them to anybody else. So we know that drafts are an essential part of the writing process, but if you can be a good proofreader, they're going to be even better when you send them off for feedback. So we never want to send something to somebody to get feedback if it's a bit of a mess, if there's spelling errors, if it's unclear. You're not going to get very good feedback, because the person won't be able to focus on the content, okay? So all the hard work and time you put into your drafts and then proofreading them before you send them off will pay off But also don't forget it's going to take a lot of drafts. So that process of writing a draft, proofreading it, send it off for feedback, respond to the feedback, keep writing, proofread again. So all part of the process. The quote there is from Peter Elbow. Meaning is not what you start with, but what you end up with. Okay, so your drafts, they won't have the meaning there, but once you've proofread, got the feedback and improved, you will have the meaning. So Peter Elbow, he's a professor of English. He's got a lot of books about writing practices. And a lot of them are really helpful. That last point there about leaving the draft for at least a day, if we have fresh eyes, you're going to pick up much more when you proofread. So that's a handy tip. So yes, those messy drafts at the beginning, they are all about you, but in the end, it is all about the reader. So that's another reason why proofreading is so important, because we don't want to be sending some kind of document that has mistakes in it. Okay, we want to have well-formatted, clearly structured document that's easy to read. If you don't have those things, then a lot of your hard work is wasted. And as we said, it's hard for someone to give you feedback. Don't make the reader work hard, lay it all out for them, all right? And so part of that is making sure the significance and the contribution of your research is really, really clear. Okay, don't make the reader wait. Tell them straight away and often about why your research is important. Okay. So part of that is getting into the reader's shoes, which can be quite difficult, but you're not writing for yourself. So this is a really good skill. And as a proofreader, that's what you need to do. Get into the reader's shoes. Will the reader understand what I'm saying here, or do I need to add some more information to make it more clear? Okay, it's a dialogue between you and the reader. Okay. If it's not clear what you're saying or the significance of your research isn't clear, your communication has failed. And it's not up to the reader to figure anything out. You have to lay it all out there. So with the purpose for writing, every section, every chapter will have a purpose, won't it? So have a think about the document you're writing now. For a lot of you, you're writing your research proposal. So what does that mean? What is the aim of your research proposal? Does anyone want to pop it into the chat, what they think the purpose of the document is? Because understanding the purpose is going to help with your proofreading and make sure you've achieved that purpose. Anyone want to put into the chat what they think the purpose of their document now might be that they're writing? What if you're writing the methods section? What's the purpose of that for the methods chapter? Depends whether you're at the research proposal, then you're proposing what your research design is and you're convincing the reader that it's robust and achievable and it's going to achieve the research aims and answer the research questions. If it's the final thesis, then it's exactly what you did step by step when you implemented the research. But if, so someone's put in the chat, to show we understand what makes a quality research project and can carry it out. That's exactly right. A research proposal is you are saying that there's a research problem, it needs to be investigated. I can do that by implementing this research design and I can help to fill some research gaps. So you are persuading and convincing the reader that you should go ahead with your research project. So it's really important as part of the proofreading process that you know in your mind exactly what the purpose of the section, the chapter, or the paragraph that you're proofreading, all right? Okay. Now, we're talking about proofreading your own work. Now, of course, before you submit your final thesis, you may decide to get professional proofreading or editing. QUT has some information on this on the HiQ Research Student page, your candidature. There's a link in there that Catherine's put in for us. So that is something you may decide to do to engage a professional. Obviously, that's going to cost money. You should have some money available in your research funding. Now, proofreader, they're going to correct the surface areas and the sentence structures. An editor is going to go probably more deeper in and look at the quality of the writing. Now, my advice is go with word of mouth, okay? Try to find someone that, a proofreader or editor that is recommended to you, all right? Try not to sort of cold call someone, because if you don't know what they're like, it could be a bit hit and miss, okay? And they do charge a lot of money, so you want to get your money's worth, all right? So that's something you can talk about with your supervisors. Okay, so now that we know why it's so important to be good proofreaders, let's have a look at some strategies. So let's be really clear that proofreading isn't writing. Okay, now we talk a lot about having a writing schedule and scheduling in time through the week to focus on your writing. Exactly the same is schedule specific proofreading time in as well. All right, so into your calendar, if you've done a whole lot of writing, at some point you want to pop in, right, I need a couple of hours now to do some serious proofreading. All right, now I strongly recommend that you print to proofread. We're going to talk about why in a minute, but I recommend you print, you read out loud, and you annotate as you go. So annotate just means leaving notes for yourself. Now, get to know your writing weaknesses. That's from people giving you feedback from your nicely proofread drafts, okay? And then if you know that there's something that you do often or that you need to improve with your writing, this is something you should take the time to focus a little bit of your proofreading time specifically on that one thing, all right? We're going to talk soon about some strategies as to how to order your proofreading, but it is hard to look at everything at once. So if there are some specific aspects of your writing, so for example, maybe you make errors with your sentence structures sometimes, then you want to specifically be looking at that, nothing else, just sentence structures at some point in your proofreading, okay? And I think it's also really important to take your time. It's not a race. If you take your time, you're going to be a much better proofreader as well. Okay. So why print? So there's been a little bit of research into this issue. Wharton Michael, she looked at whether it increases accuracy with proofreading printed text, and it did increase the accuracy. It also increased concentration and decreased fatigue. Now, Howe et al., a little bit later, they've gone in a little bit further to look at those aspects of why it would decrease fatigue and increase concentration. So they looked at it from the aspect of the cognitive map mechanism, which basically says that our brain makes a mental map of a text to understand the structure. Okay, so if we're scrolling up and down the screen, it's much harder to make that mental map of what the text looks like for the reader, which is what you are when you're proofreading, of course. So it's a little bit like you can make a mental map of a room in your house. So if you had to draw the room of a house in your house, you'd know where all the furniture was and where the door was and those sorts of things. So it's a little bit like that, but in terms of reading processes. So the cognitive map mechanism contends that it's very difficult to construct this map, whereas where on paper we can, because it's fixed, it's not moving up and down like the screen does when we scroll, and that enhances our recall and our comprehension. And this is another reason, so our mental resources have to be used much more if we're on screen compared to on the paper, okay? So that's my advice, print, if you're doing some serious proofreading. Okay, now the other thing, why read aloud when you proofread? Okay, so again, we've got Professor Elbow. He's saying that if it's understandable when you read a sentence out loud, the readers are going to find it more clear, okay? And the more you read aloud, the more you get better at writing clear and easy to read sentences. So the other thing is when you're reading aloud, you can hear when there's something weird, or if you jump topics, or if there's words missing, or if there's no linking, or if a sentence is really long as well. So not only are your eyes looking, your ears are hearing, and honestly, you will pick up a whole lot more weird things or errors if you read out loud. Okay, and print. Okay, attention to detail. This is really my bugbear, let's say. Students often don't have attention to detail, so they might submit something to me and there's different fonts, there's no page numbers, there's no consistency with spelling. Sometimes it's UK, sometimes it's US. Capitalization isn't consistent. So this is something so simple, okay, that you can do, and it does help the reader. And remember, we're being nice to the reader because the reader's going to give us feedback and make our writing better, okay. Try not to use the same vocabulary over and over again. Use a thesaurus. So attention to detail is really an important part of proofreading, which is why take your time. Okay, so my recommendation around the proofreading, remember what I said, it's very hard to do everything at once when you're reading. So I recommend you split your proofreading up into 3 parts. So there's macro proofreading. We're going to have a look at that in a minute. Micro proofreading, and then of course that attention to detail around your referencing and making sure you've got a well formatted document, which we'll talk about in a minute as well. So we actually have lots of resources on the Blackboard. Thanks, Catherine. She's popped the link in. So we have a writing circle on coherence. We have a writing circle on cohesion. So macro is coherence. It's looking at your sections and chapters. Micro is your paragraph, sentences, and words. That's the cohesion writing circle. There's recordings you can go on, and slides you can go and have a look at. Now, so I'm saying, recommending macro proofread first. So look at the sections and the chapters, then go in and look at each paragraph individually. Now, I want to do a poll to say, I'm going to ask you, why do you think that I would say macro proofread before micro proofreading? Can you guys see the poll? Oops, probably not now because I got rid of it. Oh, there we go. So is it to examine the big picture? Is it more time efficient? Maybe you disagree with me, which is okay. All right, so we've got, yeah, so basically you guys are right. To examine the big picture first, I'll explain why that's important in a minute. Yeah, I believe it's more time efficient. So basically, yes, both A and D. Now, up to you in the end, you'll work out what's best, but I'll explain why. Let's just go out of the poll. Okay, thank you for doing that. So why? Why would we macro proofread first? So as we just alluded in the poll, I think it just makes the most of your time. If you know you've got the big picture clear, then you can go into the paragraphs and also make sure that they are clear as well. If you are revising the paragraphs first without looking at the big picture first, maybe you're going to waste your time a little bit by making changes to a paragraph that maybe you need to go back to later again anyway. So as you macro proofread, as you're looking at a whole section, if you notice something, of course, in a paragraph that you need to fix, just make a note of it. All right, try not to get too distracted, but definitely make a note of it. But I just feel like it'll make the most of your time if you look at the big picture first. All right. But you know, maybe you're good. Maybe you can do it all at once. Maybe you can look at the big picture and the micro proofreading together. And as you get better at it, that is entirely possible. All right, so let's look at what we mean by macro proofreading. So if you proofread a section first, then you could, so if you've got a chapter and it has 5 sections, proofread each of the sections, and then you can look at the chapter as a whole. Okay, that would be my recommendation. Macro proofreading is focus on the sections first. So basically the key to what you're doing is making the significance and contribution of your research clear. All right, even if it's a proposal, you still know that you're going to make some kind of contribution. Okay, so this is what we're focusing on, because if, remember what we said, if the significance isn't clear, you know, you're going to lose your reader. Okay, so we want to make sure that that's there and it's really clear as part of our macro proofreading. So also remember we talked about the aim or the purpose of each section or chapter. That's part of your macro proofreading as well. What was the aim of that section? What was the aim of that chapter? And have you achieved those aims? All right. Now, obviously, when you're macro proofreading different sections, they're going to have different aims. So, you know, you'll need to adapt what you're looking for and what those aims are depending on each section and each chapter, and also, of course, depending on your document as well. Okay, but every section should have some kind of explicit information about your research problem, why it's significant and needs to be solved, something about a research gap, research questions, something that links back to your study. All right, that's what you're looking for when you're focusing on that macro proofreading. So if you take each section of a chapter, print it out separately, write down the main point of each paragraph, then you can think, okay, have I led the reader through? Have I scaffolded what I'm saying? So do the paragraphs flow clearly? Okay, and you should, just by writing down the main points, you should be able to gather how that's looking and whether you're leading the reader through enough. Do they connect to each other, the paragraphs? Okay. Now, not every paragraph needs to connect, right? Because of course we've got different main points in each paragraph. But what I mean by connect is it's all part of a subheading, right? So they must be related to whatever the topic is for that subheading. Okay, so you have to make sure you haven't gone off topic, also part of macro proofreading. Is there anything missing? Is there something you've forgotten to do with that subheading topic? So once you've taken those main points, which should only take a minute, then you can have a look and make sure you've achieved your aims for the section, and have you been explicit and clear about the research value. So once you've done all the sections in a chapter, now you can go to the main point of each section, right, of the whole chapter, and see how that's flowing. Are the sections ordered in a way that's going to lead the reader through and build on your main points? Again, is there anything missing? Whatever you said you were going to do in this chapter, have you achieved that? And again, is the contribution and significance of your research clear? So that's a really important theme, isn't it, all the way through with this macro proofreading, making sure that the reader knows exactly why your study is important and why we need it. Okay. All right, so of course we need to micro proofread those paragraphs. Okay, I'm just saying I believe you should do the macro first. If you can do it all at once, great. But if you get stuck in a paragraph trying to fix it up, you're going to lose your train of thought of where you were with the big picture. That's all. Okay, so with your paragraphs, you're going to double check those topic sentences and your sentence structures. You're going to check your verbs, your vocabulary. Do you have transition signals leading the reader through? Is it one main point, or have you jumped topics? And again, is the so what clear? Maybe not in every paragraph, okay? You may not have a link back to your study in every single paragraph, but you would have to have in at least a few of those paragraphs in a section, okay? Now, there's a lot going on here, isn't there, in your paragraphs, in your cohesion level. So again, this is why I believe splitting your proofreading into different stages is going to be useful, and make sure that you cover everything that you need to cover. Okay. And now everybody's favorite, referencing. So I know that referencing is annoying, but we have to do it. It's part of being in your research community and feeling of belonging if you're able to adhere to the conventions of your field of research. Now, the other thing is that your referencing style, it governs the whole document. Your subheadings, the way you do your in-text citations, the way you write your reference list, the way you label tables and figures. Okay, so I know it's fiddly and annoying, but we all have to do it. So embrace it. And if you want to make that the third part of your proofreading, the one that you don't like, but leave that till last to double check that you've adhered to your referencing style. If you're using APA, APA 6 is done, it's gone. You need to be in APA 7. It's better, okay? It's much more simpler than APA 6 was in terms of a lot of things. So it's all accessible. If you Google APA 7, there's a lot of information there. You can even go straight to the APA site as well. All right, so, but an important part of your proofreading, okay, because if you can show your reader that you know how to follow the academic conventions, it bodes well for the way that you undertake your research as well. You've got an eye for detail and you can follow the rules, so to speak. All right, so formatting a long Word document. So another fiddly thing that's a little bit annoying, you know, but again, it's something that you need to learn. It's part of your writing development. It can take a long time to format a long document. If you have a look on the HiQ research page, your candidature, Catherine just put the link in for us in the chat. There's some good resources around long document formatting that you can use, but go with whatever works for you. You know, maybe you'll find something on YouTube videos. There's LinkedIn resources as well. I know a lot of you are at the research proposal stage. Get into that habit, okay? Submit your proposal in a beautifully formatted long Word document. So you have a table of contents that's set up correctly, your margins, your headers, all of those things are good habits to be in. And page numbers, please have page numbers. It's very annoying for someone giving you feedback if there's no page numbers because we can't refer back to the other pages, okay? Every document should have a page number. All right, so as well as writing your messy drafts and then proofreading them and dividing your proofreading up into 3 so that we can do it really well, we've got to seek feedback, of course. Alrighty, and that's why your proofreading is so important. You know, be nice to the people that are spending time giving you feedback. And as we know, it's a really important aspect of improving your writing and improving your documents. So if we work in isolation, our research and writing skills are probably not going to develop as well as we would want them. So that's all part of the feedback process, isn't it? Engaging with whoever it is, your supervisor or a peer, and getting feedback and getting that dialogue going around feedback. So it helps you to evaluate the quality of your work and where you can improve, and also helps you to be more self-regulated because you can begin to notice what it is that you need to improve, and you can proofread looking for those things. Okay, so we do have some peer feedback sessions available now in 2021. It's a new offering that we have where you get to receive feedback on your in-progress written drafts. It helps to increase your critical thinking and your problem solving skills, and the feedback that we've been getting has been really positive for the students that have come along. So if you can make it to a proofreading peer session, a peer feedback session, I think that would really help your writing as well. So we've got one on Thursday, 10 to 12, usually 2 a month. So you can see there's the 2 in June. Thanks, Catherine. Catherine's just put the link in if you were interested in registering for some peer feedback sessions. They do really help you become a better proofreader of your own work as well, of course. All right, so we're going really well with time. We are actually up to our exemplar activity, so that's good. We're going to be able to go nice and slow, and we're going to have plenty of time. Now, before we go into the exemplars, I'm going to do my little spiel about why these activities are helpful for you. And remember what I said before, I cannot always have an exemplar that's exactly your topic. I wish I could, but I can't. So I really want you to make the most of this opportunity. You are a reader, okay? You want to understand the topic as a reader. It doesn't matter if you don't know all the ins and outs of every single topic in our exemplars. What are you looking for? You're looking for the quality of the writing and the clarity of, you know, the information that's supposedly needed to be in whatever section that we are looking at. All right, and the idea is you're looking for the quality of the writing and applying anything that you learn from these sessions and then the exemplars to your own writing. So researchers have found that this is certainly a way for students to improve their writing. If they engage in exemplar activities, the writing has to be authentic, so real. I can't just make something up as an exemplar. So it has to be real examples. And then if we discuss and self-reflect on what was in those exemplars, then that's really going to help your evaluative judgment and also, of course, improve your writing. So I hope you're now convinced and you're going to engage with me and the exemplars. All right, so the key is noticing, all right, not just the content, notice the mechanics of the writing, okay? I don't give you bad exemplars. They're not perfect. You know, there's potentially things to improve, and you as a reader might say, I don't really like it for this reason, but I would never give an exemplar of something that's bad writing. I know sometimes students want me to. It's not all that useful unless we're going to totally fix it up and make it better, potentially, you know, but you're better off with little snippets that way, not a whole sort of exemplar. All right. So let's go. So around 30 minutes, this should take us. I'll try not to go too fast. If you want a copy of the annotated activity sheet, so with my notes on it that I'm going to do right now, please email me and I'll send it to you. That's no problem at all. All right, so now, we're going to have the 3-step proofreading process, which was the macro, the micro, the academic conventions. Haven't dwelled too much on the academic conventions, but sounds like nobody, I don't think, said that they didn't have the activity sheet. So hopefully you've all got it there. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop the share. Okay, and I'm going to go. Okay, so now I'm going to share again. But this time I'm sharing the exemplar. All right, so I haven't noticed in the chat, let me just grab the chat. Okay, so everyone seems to have it. All right, so that's great. So let's get going. So you can see we're up to here, proofreading. So let's look at exemplar 1. Now I'm going to highlight as we go through macro with the yellow, micro with the green. Okay. The other things that we're looking for. Okay, so I'm assuming everybody can see. I've made it really big so everyone can see it okay. All right, so let's have a look at the macro proofreading. Now I've put this note in, and remember when you're doing your macro proofreading, the aim of your section or whatever you're proofreading will be different every time. So you'll need to ascertain what that is. So for us this time, let's go and look at our, so we've got the first paragraph, the very beginning of a research proposal, methods section. Okay, I don't always use methods in an exemplar, but I thought I'd mix it up today. The text has been manipulated. So these are the initial paragraphs. I haven't included everything in the section. It was quite long. We don't have that time. This is the topic, emergency medical team training. So this is their research design and their first paragraph. So what are the aims of the beginning paragraphs of a methods section? Now, whether it's a research proposal or not, anyone, or how about if I put it this way, can everyone put in the chat what they think the aims of the beginning paragraphs of a methods section might be? Anybody? Nope. Come on. Be brave. I won't read your name out. No. Oh my goodness. Come on, guys. Oh, the aims or objectives. Yes, thank you. The aims or objectives of the whole project. Of what? Yes, the whole project. Yes, thank you. Now, repetition. You need to keep repeating. Alrighty. If this is the third chapter, if your research design could potentially be the third chapter, if yes, you've given the aims in chapter 1 and chapter 2, or even section 1, section 2, if it's your proposal, you've got a long document. You have to keep reminding us, all right? And at the beginning of a section or a chapter is the best time to remind us. So the aims and objectives of the whole project, good. What else? There's something else as well. There's beginning chapter, paragraph, sorry, of methods. Anything else? How it matches the gap and the problem. Yes, you could do that. Yes, briefly. We're missing the most important bit. I would say you also want an overview, yes, of the specific test to be performed, exactly, and a summary of the section as well. Yeah, yep. Yep, you could also put the summary of the section. All right, excellent, thank you. Now, this thing that we've just written here, right, how many times do you think I read somebody's section to do with anything or chapter? Yes, some justifications might be useful as well about why using. Yeah. So how many times do you think I read someone's work and they do not have any of this information? Pretty much all the time. All right. So I don't want to see that. I want to know at the beginning of a section, especially something really important, such as the beginning of a whole methods. Okay, so someone said, so the summary of the section is the most important part to put in there. No, not necessarily. That summary of the section, I would say maybe. I would say yes for a chapter, definitely. For a section, maybe you don't need to. Yeah, so the question is, if it's a research proposal, should I put a summary of the section? Not necessarily. Okay, but definitely for a chapter. Yes, definitely for a chapter. Yep, no problem. You know, and the summary of this section could just be, this section discusses the research sampling procedure, the data collection instruments, and ethics. That's it. All right, but I understand in the research proposal you are limited and it may not be necessary because the section's fairly short anyway. However, I would be putting at least a sentence that has the objectives of the whole project and a sentence that gives an overview of the research design. Don't make me wait. Alrighty, don't make me wait until the 4th paragraph to go, oh, they're doing qualitative research. I want to know at the beginning. All right, now let's see if this exemplar has done that. So I'm going to read it out loud. I'm just going to highlight a few things as we go. All right, the aim of the present study. So there we go. We've got it straight away, haven't we? Is to identify factors that predict team performance in simulated cardiac arrest scenarios. Okay, now most people should know what cardiac arrest is. At some point, this person would have already defined what they mean, wouldn't they? So it may not be necessary to define anything from this first sentence, but remember, this is a proposal in your final thesis. There could be something to do with your aims that you may need to just redefine, just in case. That's something to think about. But at the moment, I think we're pretty clear. Right, data collected during simulated cardiac arrest will be analysed to identify factors that predict team performance in emergency medical situations. Okay, the sample for the proposed study will comprise of groups of health professionals attending training sessions. Data will be collected from at least 60 teams. Total sample is 240. During their standard debriefing sessions, all participants will complete a questionnaire, which will include closed and open-ended questions. Videotapes will be analysed. Multiple regression analyses will be performed to test for relationships. Based on the multiple regression analysis results, 3 poorly functioning teams will be selected for in-depth case study analysis. Videotapes will then be analysed using a framework of activity theory to identify factors that contributed to the team's poor task performance. The study findings will provide strategies that may be used to improve higher education training programs in cardiac arrest resuscitation. Okay. So I know we've got another paragraph. Let's come back. What are the aims? So we could say here, sentence 1, we've got it, haven't we? Very clear in there. Okay. How are you feeling about this research project methods after 1 paragraph? Pretty much in there, isn't there? We can get a pretty good idea of the overall research design, and there's a lot going on. Do you feel like that? This person's going to be very busy. Do you have any questions at this stage after reading this first paragraph? I've got a few. Do you want me to tell you? Maybe I should. My question is, activity theory. What's that? Potentially, they could have added another sentence to briefly tell us what activity theory is. Do you think that it would have already been explained? You would hope so. Where do you think it might have been explained what that activity theory framework is? Remember, we're just pulled out of the methods section, this one. So there's a lot before in this research proposal. Where do you think the activity theory may have been discussed? Could be in the lit review. Yes, thank you. Yeah, and probably in the intro as well, you would hope. Sounds important, doesn't it? Would you say that it's important in the methods to repeat what the activity theory might be? If you've given it, yes. So someone in the chat has said yes, but it only needs to be brief. My assumption would be the lit review is where it's gone deep, right? And talked about other studies that have used it and begun that justification. Okay, remember the lit review, that's part of the justification, isn't it? Part of the purpose of the lit review is to start to justify your research design. So, you know, giving all the information about activity theory, and then somewhere in these methods, because we've talked about it again, I believe you would need another sentence or two just to remind and even refer back. And you could say to the reader, as discussed in section 2 point whatever, and then they can go back if they've forgotten. All right. What do you think about this last sentence? The study findings will provide strategies that may be used to improve higher education training programs. It's pretty good, this one, because it's giving us an idea straight away about what is the contribution. What are we doing this for? All right, that's pretty clear for us there. Someone said in the chat, can I put a sentence summary of the lit review as something is lacking and linked to the current study aims? Yes, in your method you could, yes, and I would definitely be doing that if it's in your final thesis, okay? But if it's your, even a confirmation document, because you have more words, research proposal, you might not have the words, alrighty? And because it's a smaller document, the reader can remember more easily, okay? Whereas in a final thesis, because you've got all of those chapters and your reader's really probably not going to sit down and read those first 3 chapters in one go, okay? So that reminder of what was found in the lit review could definitely be something good to add in. It's just, you keep on planting those seeds, all right? These, in these first 3 paragraphs of a final thesis or these first 3 sections of your proposal, they're really, really important to set up the rest. All right, let's have a look at paragraph 2. So we're still looking at our macro, right? While simulated arrests, simulated cardiac arrests, I'd probably put the word cardiac in there. What do you reckon? Are an accepted method of training. They've not been used extensively in research to date. Interesting. Bit of a gap, isn't it? Further, studying real cardiac arrest can be problematic because a large number of factors that may impact outcomes in field situations may not be within the control of the teams. For this reason, simulations provide a suitable context to conduct controlled evaluations of team functioning. The simulations will be conducted in a mock hospital setting with real hospital equipment. The simulated cardiac arrest will mimic real cardiac arrest as closely as possible. Participants will be asked to perform as they would in their normal professional roles. The mixed method approach addresses 2 primary research questions. There's our questions. I like this. Quantitative survey for this first question. And then that's a good thing for us to know. And then we've got the case study for this one. So that gives us some good information, doesn't it? As soon as you've got mixed method research, we want to know what's informing which, how are you going to implement those? Are they at the same time? Do you do one before the other? So that sort of information is important to get out quite early. We're still in our second paragraph, which is good. And then you can see here the subsequent sections give all the details of the research instruments, data collection, ethics, and data analysis. Data analysis is super important. Never ever forget about your data analysis, research proposal or not. We want to know how you're going to analyze the data. Okay, again, I read a lot of method sections for proposals. There's not much about data analysis. Okay, all right, so how are we feeling with our macro? Do you feel like the aims of that method section, do you think we're getting that information early on? Are we getting an overview of the research design? Do we understand the research aims? I would say yes. Okay, so we've got sentence 1. I would say, what else? This one, sentence 10 in paragraph 1. What about paragraph 2? I would say yes, we get a lot of information as well. So what about this one? Do the 2 paragraphs have a clear connection or flow? So let's have a look. The first one gives us the aim and the overview, right? And we probably had a few questions here. We had a question about the activity theory. And I would say, yeah, simulated cardiac arrests. What does that mean? That could be a question as well. And it's actually answered, isn't it? straight away. And we were also given a gap here in sentence 1. So there's basically a justification, isn't there? Just reading that the paragraphs are in the wrong order. Paragraph 2 should go first. I disagree, because this is more focused. This is more broad. This is giving us an overview. Then paragraph 2 is explaining why simulated cardiac arrest rather than real ones. Okay, they're saying, you know, we're still going to get what we need. I think this about the mixed method approach, that could potentially be earlier. Would you already have research? That would, thank you for reminding me about the research questions. Yeah, let me come back to that in a second. But I would say somewhere in here, it would be a good idea to add that this is a mixed method. Mixed method. That word. It's good to know that straight away. Even though we sort of know from what they've given as the overview, it is not, we can know straight away. So that I would probably, did I cut that out? Oh no, okay, cool. So I think the flow is good, right? I think we've got a good broad overview here. And so so someone's asked in the chat, because notice the research questions, it's pretty early, but remember this is a research proposal. I think getting these research questions out early is good. Would you already have research questions listed in previous parts as part of the research problem? Yes, that was asked in the chat. I would say yes. You probably couldn't really wait till now, but I don't mind the double up. Okay, I don't mind if you put your research questions in the lit review potentially, or potentially you could have them in the introduction. That's probably a little bit too early. There's really no rules about when to put your research questions. I wouldn't say. Your supervisor will probably be pretty clear on what they would like you to do. So more than once would be what I would say, even in a proposal. Would it be okay to not have the question specified here if they're already in the research problem? Yeah, but I don't mind the repetition of the questions. Even if you could say the addresses, so you would say the two primary research questions, you're just reminding the reader. And if you can fit it into the word limit, it's not bad, because I like how, because remember, you probably, so for this person, if they've put the research questions in the lit review section of the proposal, they wouldn't have this bit, right? They wouldn't have about the quantitative for question 1 and the qualitative for question 2. And that's really, really important, that linking and telling us, you know, how the research design relates to the research questions, okay? Again, up to you. This is all part of your critical thinking and making sense for the reader, all right? Okay, so we better move on. Yep, so we had the sentence 1, is the value of the research explicit and clear? It's not bad. I wouldn't say it's explicit. I think we've got it here. The study findings will provide strategies to improve higher education training programs. But, so I would say up here we could answer this and say a little, but could be better, right? However, do you think this part of the research proposal, is it that important to have it? Probably. The aim of the present means to identify factors. What if we put another sentence here? Sentence to say why this is valuable. maybe. But that's how you could be a little bit more explicit, is just to say, you know, insight into these factors can do something, right? Improve patient outcomes would be my guess. All right. Yep, so we talked about putting the research questions in the methods chapter. So micro proofreading now. Clear topic sentences, and what's our other thing? Main point maintained, and the verbs. All right. The aim of the present mixed method study. I really like saying what sort of study. I think that makes the topic sentence more clear. Okay, and that's fairly broad. Data collected will be analysed. I feel like this flows quite well, this paragraph. What about you? It's got a fair bit of information in there, but it's stepping us through. I can envisage how they're going to do this, which is what we want. All right, I do have questions, which of course I'll answer later on. But that's okay, because you can't answer every single thing right now. And of course, yes, I want that activity theory defined. I want this defined, the team composition and process questionnaire. That would have to be, but they do go on with the instruments later. Okay. More information about the analysis, but all that would have come later. So I feel like this is all on topic. And I don't mind this one either. I feel like, because this is having the simulated scenarios, it could be an alert to go, so how much are we going to be able to, you know, how robust is this research going to be? So that's where they've gone in and justified why. Okay. So I think that's quite good. And as I said, I like this as well. It's very clear. All right, have a look at the tense. Will be, it's obvious why we need to be in this tense, because it's a proposal. Yeah, so that's okay. This person needs to remember, after their proposal passes, they need to change it to past tense once they do the research. Okay, so it's pretty much all in present tense and future tense, which is fine. All right, so the paragraphs, they're micro proofreading. There's really nothing much there that needs to be fixed. It's not bad. I don't think that the paragraph goes off topic. Page numbers, yes, we do have. And what about linking? Transition signals. There's one here. What do you think? Should there be something through here maybe? They've got will then be analysed. That's not bad. Further is good. There's another further. Be good to mix it up, wouldn't it? Try to have a different word there. For this reason, that's good. That's you justifying, isn't it? Okay. Could you explain more what transition signals are and their purpose in the chat? Transition signals lead the reader through. Okay, so otherwise it's words on a page. So in addition, therefore, however, furthermore, moreover, all of those words. Okay. So we need those to lead us through. So this is an example here. Videos will then be, so this is stepping us through the steps. This is saying we're going to do multiple regression analyses. Then we're going to, based on those results, we're going to do this. Then the videotapes. Yeah, potentially you could remove that first, further. Yeah. That would be okay, and then you wouldn't. Yeah, or you could change. Yeah, you're right. You probably don't even need something here. Yeah, because you've got multiple regression analyses, and then you're saying based on. So this is really the linking from there to there. So I think the paragraphs flow really well. And I'm happy with the macro as well. And we've got the page numbers. All right. So as I said, if you want this annotated version, email me and I'll give it to you, because I'll also fill in all of these questions as well. All right, let's move on. We're doing pretty good with time. So similar questions again. Now this time, investigating undergraduate students' academic literacy experiences. There's a type there. Now, so this, again, being manipulated, this is a final thesis and it's a lit review, and it's a section in the middle of the lit review. We've got the subheading, student identity, radio. So let's come back to our questions. What are the aims of the beginning paragraphs of a lit review section? What do you think? So this is not the beginning paragraphs. Would you say lit review section? So thinking about your lit review, so we would probably want to define the variable, or concept. We would need to explain in terms of the link to the study, and potentially we would want to see what we know from previous, so some analysis of previous studies. And because it's the beginning paragraphs, we can say maybe the structure of the section. I would say if it is long. Okay. All right, so let's have a look and see if we achieve them. Now it's actually 3 paragraphs. Now we're looking for that research aim or gap and the value, right? So macro proofreading first. Paragraph 1. So we're student identity. Let's see if there's a link between the subheading and the first paragraph. Within tertiary education context, literacy, language, culture, and identity have been acknowledged as inseparable concepts. Despite these important links, there is currently a lack of research investigating the student identities of international undergraduate students. So that seems good for our value and our gaps, doesn't it? Wingate reports that to date, most student identity research has focused on postgraduate cohorts, which has led to gaps. Gee defines identity as the way students see themselves, as well as how well they understand the actions they need to be performed to be accepted. So there's our definition for the first year. So we've got our definition. We've got some research gaps. So if so far our macro is going pretty good, we've got all of that. And we also had a link to the subheading, which helps. Alrighty. For first year tertiary students, this means learning and engaging in the literacy practices and discourses valued by their field of study. Now, I want you to notice we have a citation here and then it's explained further in the author's own words. I want you to try to do that when you're citing sources. Add in your voice. Gee explains further that positive student identities are developed through opportunities for meaningful and value-laden action, interaction and dialogue. Huff concurs and describes student identity as fluid and hybrid. Consequently, the interactions students have with their teachers and peers play an important role. Okay, so that we're building as to why this is important. Paragraph 2, although there's been limited research, a few recent studies have contributed. Okay, so that's part of our aim, isn't it? We need to look at previous studies. Gargano, international undergraduate students, said that they had a fragmented and ambiguous learning environment because of stereotypes. Despite these challenges, They viewed interaction with peers as advantageous in learning how to negotiate culturally diverse contexts. Pham and Saltmarsh did a study. They have called on universities to improve curricular designs rather than exposing students to labels and negative assumptions that are unsuitable. Wingate contends that the current deficit pedagogies hinder opportunities. Okay. And domestic students often have insufficient knowledge. So this is okay. Could we have a so what here? Potentially. Okay, so there's some good information that's building up as to why this study might be necessary, but there could be another sentence that says, so what? So what could that be? Something like insight into students, or what else could we say? Students' experiences as entities and provide something, right? So that's what we could do. As if we were looking at the macro, we could say, okay, but give us a bit more info. Paragraph 3, positive identity construction is a multi-layered and complex process. Got some more previous research. They propose, they describe belonging as a fundamental human need. So we're going further into what identity construction means. Why is sense of belonging is important? Okay. Right, and then this last sentence is talking about the gap again. Right. So this sentence potentially is better down here, maybe. Do you think you need a so what in both those paragraphs? Probably not. But can you see how paragraphs are good, but they could potentially give us more for that macro? We really want to know why this is important to do this research. Okay. Are those aims achieved? I would say yes, mainly. Yes, we've got some gaps. Is the value? No, I would say could be more clear. What do you guys think? Righto, so that's our macro. Our micro, let's have a look if the paragraphs go off topic, have a look at the verbs. So we've got literacy, language, culture, and identity are inseparable, but there's currently a lack of research looking at them all. Okay. So question in the chat, for the literature review, I try to use past tense when discussing previous studies, but I'm in doubt when paraphrasing their findings. Yes. What is your suggestion? Yes. Okay. Example paragraph 1, sentence 6. If you're talking about the research in general, you can be in present tense, there is currently, or let's see if I can find one. Or you can use present perfect if you're talking about the literature in general. So this could essentially say there has been a lack of research, but because we've got the word currently, we've gone present tense, and that's okay as well. Depends on your study. Now, in this one, Wingate is a seminal author, a seminal researcher. So keeping her in present tense means the things that she's researching and saying is still true. So if I say here, Wingate reported, then it's still okay, but because she's seminal and really important for this study, it's good to keep her in present tense. The same with Guy, seminal researcher in this field. Okay, so again, if he defines identity as something, it's still defined as that. If I say he defined it, then I feel like it's not as strong. However, and the same with off here. So here we're trying to build this, we're defining here, and when you're defining, I think it makes sense to be in present tense because the thing is still defined in that way. Now, if we come down here, paragraph 2, there you go. There's an example of they're using present perfect. There has been limited research. Present perfect is a good tense because it means there has been in the past and it's still going now. Okay, so it's a good tense. It's not past and it's not present. It's both, basically. It straddles both. Now, look at this one. This is really about what the question you're asking about tense. In a study by Gargano, 2012, the students reported, now, has to be past tense because they reported it in the past. So when you're reporting the findings of one study, put it in past tense. But if you're reporting people that are helping you to give your definitions, I would go present tense because we want that definition to stand now, right? So I hope that answers. And I feel like this one stays on topic because it's defining our subheading, isn't it? And it's giving us the gap. Although there has been limited research and there's some studies there, we've got the, so a few recent studies. So we've got Gargano, we've got Pham and Saltmarsh, okay, and we've got Wingate. So here, Wingate again, she's contending. She's super important in this study. So much of what she says has been kept in present tense. This is about going further into how students construct their identities. And again, some more previous studies. More of the gap. But yeah, I really think this is missing a bit of the so what. So we would either do it here in this sentence paragraph or maybe even here. All right, so we're going to quickly move on because it's almost time for you guys to do your proofreading. But is the main point maintained? I would say, yep, pretty good. I would say that they're correct. Tense is hard, all right? What I really want you to think about with tense, particularly in your lit review, is what makes sense, all right? And that should get you right. Appropriate transition signals, we can have a quick look at those. Non-academic words, I didn't notice any. Yes, we've got page numbers. Yes, the referencing conventions have been adhered to. Let's have a really quick look at those. What do you notice here? That is in alphabetical order. Okay, that's what you need for APA, right? So that's correct. You put your citations, multiple citations in text, in put them in alphabetical order. So someone's asked when to use author, then the year in the brackets, and when to use author year. So the author with the year in the brackets is author prominent, which means that the author is important, right? Remember how I said Gee and Wingate, seminal authors, right? It's not always in as author prominent, but it is a lot of the time. So two things. Author with the year in the putting the author in the sentence if they're seminal, and if it's important to know who the author is. And you can put the author of the year in the brackets, particularly when you've got multiple, or if it's the content that's the most important thing. But I would also mix it up. Okay, it's boring if you do it the same way all the times. There are two reference convention styles. What are those two? It is APA. What else do you notice? There's no et al. Because there's et al. there, et al. So I'm not quite sure what you mean. In APA 7, you now don't need to put Yeah, no, it's just APA, this one. In APA 7, the rule has changed. If you had 3 or more authors, the first time you cited them, you had to put all of the authors. In APA 7, you don't need to. You can put et al. The very first time, which is good. Okay. But yep, this one's definitely APA. So linking is the only thing we haven't really looked at. Consequently, that's not bad. Similarly, that's good. Okay, but as we read through, it's making sense. We're being led through. My biggest criticism would be we needed probably a so what somewhere in here. Okay. All right. So as I said, if you need or want this annotated version, I'll make sure I answer all the questions and I can email that to you. I'm just going to do a save. All right. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. All right, so it's your turn. We've done pretty well for time. You've got a good 25 minutes to now go through and proofread your document that you've got prepared. So hopefully you wrote down a couple of aspects of your writing that you know you make errors on. So whether that's your macro or your micro, you can have a look for those. Also remember, we've condensed this exercise, okay? We're sort of looking very quickly at the macro and the micro and the conventions. And you may want to do that now, depending on how many paragraphs you've got there ready to proofread. But ideally, you do want to separate them out, but see how you go. You guys might be good at doing your macro and your micro all at once, but just remember that I want you to save time. So don't get caught up in the nitty gritty of a paragraph until you know for sure that you've got the structure where you need it to be and all the macro aspects ready and good. So this is what we're looking at. I'm going to keep this one up. Obviously, the aims of your section will be different to everybody else's, so have a think about that. But yeah, I will give you till quarter to 12, and I'll come back and we can do the Q&A, but please pop some answers in the chat, some questions in the chat in the meantime. There's not too many of us here. If you did want to turn on your mic and ask me a question, that's fine as well, because I will be here. I'll mute and close the camera so you guys can go in there and do your proofreading. Okay, I'll see you soon. But please put anything you want to ask in the chat or turn on your mic. So main takeaways for today is proofreading. It's an essential part of the writing process. I really encourage you to make sure you proofread before you submit your drafts to anybody. Be nice to the people giving you feedback. Break your proofreading up into the parts. As you get better and better, you know, maybe you'll be able to do your macro and your micro at once, but see how you go. But yeah, looking at the big picture first is a good strategy, but you might disagree. Do what works for you. Attention to detail, of course, is essential. So as we saw with the research, that if we print and read on paper, read slowly, read aloud, you're going to pick up a lot more. And understand your writing weaknesses, and you can focus on those. So if grammar is a problem, you should go through your paragraphs looking specifically for that grammar error, okay, so you can fix it. Try, if you haven't, to go and do our academic writing skills assessment tool. That will, you get to self-assess where you think your skills are at, and the tool will highlight the writing resources and events that will be good for those specific writing needs that you have. Also, of course, it's not just your writing that you need to improve. It's all of these skills here that we have divided into 3 pathways. And please do the HDR skills assessment tool, which again, you self-assess all of those 20 skills, and then you can find out the best resources that GRED has for you to improve those skills. And what is good is you can also see there that you can record all your experiences. So you can record that you came to this writing circle, and you can put that in your annual progress report. Anything else that would help with your on your CV, you can add in there. So it's a really good way to do your record keeping. So remember, we have a lot of different events here and resources on Blackboard. We've got a lounge tomorrow, a writer's lounge, HDR feedback on Thursday, a writing circle next Tuesday, and Thursday, the 3rd of June, how to be more competitive in the job market, interview strategies. That's a really good one for your career. So hopefully you are looking at your e-updates. Everything's on HiQ that GRED has. Of course, those Blackboard resources. So the slides from today, the recording from today will go on Blackboard. All right. So I would really love to know how you went with your proofreading. We have a question in the chat. Do you have further suggestions on how to get a fresh eye on your own writing? Give it some space. That's my best advice. Especially if you've been writing something for quite a few days or potentially weeks, just give it at least a day, probably even more if you can, which is why it's a really good idea to schedule proofreading, you know, into your entire writing schedule, your life schedule. But yes, so if you can leave it, even leave it for a week. You may not have time to do that because of your deadlines, I understand, but this is part of being really organized, isn't it? So, but give it some space, go and work on something else for a day, and then come back with fresh eyes. And of course, printing will be a whole different view, honestly. I know the environment is important, but you can print on both sides of the page. That'll help reduce. But yeah, really recommend that. But just give your brain a rest from that section or chapter, and then come back to it. That's my advice there. Hope that helps. Does anyone else want to share how they went with their proofreading? I can turn the recording off. I can pause it if that's what you're worried about. But don't be afraid to turn on your mics. It's always lovely to hear you guys and see you. Or any other questions that anybody has? Someone has asked in the chat, how many words would you recommend for the final document? I've usually used 10% of the body for assignments, but final doc is huge. Okay, so are you talking about your research proposal, or are you talking about your final thesis? Oh, you're talking about the abstract. Well, it'll depend. Shouldn't be, for your final thesis, it could be up to sort of 300 words. For the research proposal, you might be limited to 100 or 150. There's probably, supervisors will give you an idea. So that's what I mean. If it's the research proposal abstract, potentially you wouldn't have time for that big, broad sentence about your topic. You might have to go straight in to what the aim is, just depends. But definitely your final thesis, you've got a little bit more words to play with. So, and also the final one, you have to say what you did, why you did it, and what you found as well. So someone said, yeah, so someone has said in some examples they saw 3 pages for an abstract. Yeah, that's pretty long. My final thesis, I reckon it was 2 pages double spaced. It was long, but we were allowed to have it that long. So you just see what your supervisor thinks as well. So if you want some proofreading practice, honestly, the peer feedback sessions are the way to go. They're not scary. I do try to match you up with someone from your field of study if I can, or at least someone at the similar candidature stage. And, you know, it's valuable. And as part of the proofreading or the peer feedback, we have critical discussion, which is really important. So you can give feedback on the feedback. The more you do it, the better you'll get. So, you know, I really would recommend that. The peer feedback sessions, and there is one on Thursday. So they're only small. There's not, you know, there's not 100 students in there. So you know, and even just, we call it feedback literacy. So similar to academic literacy, your feedback literacy is improving your skills at asking for, giving and receiving feedback, all part of the process. Excellent. So anyone that wants to come on Thursday, and as I said, they're on twice a month. Now, if you are new to the proofreading, the peer feedback sessions, there is a little resource on Blackboard that the UniHub email will give you all the links for. It only takes 10 minutes. It's just about feedback literacy, and it sets you up so you're ready to go for the session. But that's all you have to do for those peer feedback sessions. The registration email will tell you where to go for that, or please email me. Honestly, if you guys have questions, you want to double check something, you know, you can always send me an email. Okay, so I think we are probably all good to go. There's still a few of you there. Please turn on your mics if you want to. What I'm going to do is say thank you all for coming. If you didn't put your student ID, by the way, in the chat, you could still do that now. That would be fantastic. But thank you for coming and engaging with me. And I hope that the session was beneficial for you.